Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Evolve with Emily show. I am your host, Emily Hayden, and today's guest is a feminine embodiment and somatic life and love coach. She helps women feel free and powerful in their bodies, business, and relationships while mastering their magnetism. And before we say hi, I have to share with you guys that I connected with Taylor at the Untamed Experience. So shout out to Taylor Simpson for that experience. It was really incredible and connected me with so many beautiful ladies and individuals that now are becoming friends and people that I'm just so thankful to be connected to. And I bring that up because, anyone can put anything in their Instagram bio. And for me, you can't fake embodiment. And Taylor is one of those people that is magnetic. Like, I feel that everyone, not just myself, was drawn to her at this experience, especially her deep feminine embodiment and essence. And she, just by being herself, literally gave other women to be more free within themselves and their own bodies. So that's why I wanted to have a conversation with her, because she is just someone who truly embodies what she's teaching and what she coaches other women to do. And I saw it firsthand for an entire week. And so I'm just really excited to get into today's conversation, because I know that that kind of embodiment, it doesn't come easy often it comes from some difficult places, and I think it's places that we can all relate to. So I always say, if you want to embody something in your life, find somebody who has walked the path, somebody who can guide you forward and share the things that help them along their journey. So today's going to be the most nourishing conversation, I have no doubt. And with that, let's go ahead and welcome Taylor to the show. Welcome.
Wow. Thank you for such a beautiful introduction, and thank you for having me. It's everything that you said. Of course, you see it in me because that also is within you, and you are truly a woman who walks her talk and embodies her wisdom on such a deep level. And I know the courage and the trust and the faith and the resiliency that it requires to become that. So I see you, sister. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much. So I was thinking about how I want today's conversation to go, and I want it to stay open to the flow. You and I are both very that way. So I want to keep it open for that. And I think it would be really cool to take them on a journey of helping them identify where they may be at. And I kind of see it as like your journey from way back then, and then taking them through like what life could look like when you build a life by design, and when you build a life from your divine feminine essence instead of such a unhealed place. And I feel like a good place to start may be sharing some signs and symptoms, maybe some notifications that would let people know that they're operating from their masculine shields of protection, that would let them know that they're actually not dropped into their feminine essence. So what do you think are some things that you witnessed or maybe you've experienced when women are in their hyper masculine energy?
That's such a good question. And I feel in my own experience, the reason why I'm able to identify it is because I've been that and I've lived that. And so many women are operating from their masculine, but not their divine masculine, their wounded masculine. Mm-hmm. And regardless of whether we're a man or a woman, we all have masculine and feminine energy within us. Mm-hmm. And the ways that masculine energy represents is something that's so familiar to most women, because we were born into a world and a society where masculine energy is celebrated and achieving is celebrated and doing and working really hard and pushing and getting to the goal. And while that's beautiful, women aren't designed to operate the same way as men. And so when it comes to, operating in, say, our wounded masculine energy, what this can look like is first and foremost, like a level of hyper independence and fear of connection. kind of like holding on to the strong shield of like, I could do it all myself. I don't need a man. I don't need anyone to help me. I'm going to do it all on my own. And this like fear of deep, intimate connection. And that can even show up as being really controlling and being really rigid and being really forceful about how we do things. It can be focused more on doing and achieving and goals and getting to the outcome, less than the process and less than how we feel in the process. A lot of women have a fear of resting. And when they do rest, they feel really guilty for it and they feel shameful and they feel wrong. And like, if I rest, then I won't get to the thing that I need to get to, and all of those things. There's even like a guarded heart is one of the common things that shows up, especially if women have gone through some form of heartbreak when it comes to the masculine, whether that's with their father, with men that they dated, or even with God. They take on that shield of protection and feel like they need to do everything on their own in order to make things happen.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I definitely relate. When you said that in that energy, you don't care so much about how you feel throughout the process, I think about, my past, and I didn't care at all about how I was feeling in the process. There was kind of this idea of you just push through it anyways. And what that did is it actually created a disconnection between myself and my own body. And it caused me to not listen to my body. I didn't even know how to tune in and listen to my body. I remember, and I've shared this once or twice in the podcast before, but I'll share it again. I remember when one of my first therapists asked, "Where do you feel that in your body?" And I thought that it was like woo-woo BS. I was like, there's no way I can feel something in my body. And that kind of just shows how disconnected I was. And so I think it's important to help people who maybe are that like previous version of me who feel, hold on, you can feel like where you feel things within your body. So what are some practices that can help people get back into their body and to start to create connections with their body so they can really like feel in tune with their body?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I so deeply relate to your journey and your story. And most of my life leading up to who I am now and how I live my life now, I was so numb, like numb and disconnected and operating from my mind and overthinking and trying to figure things out and even like mentally processing my feelings and trying to make sense of them or even trying to fix them because I didn't have the awareness of how to process emotions and how to process feelings. And the first thing I would say, like one of my favorite practices, and this is a somatic practice, probably similar to the one that your therapist guided you through, but you can do a practice called a body scan, where you start at the top of your head and you just notice either the sensations outside of your body, maybe how your legs or your butt or your back feels against the chair or the space beneath you, and just feeling your body against the surfaces that you are sitting on, first and foremost, like noticing what textures are around you, noticing the temperature of the air, just noticing where you are in space. And then you can even take it internally, starting at the top of your head and scanning through your face, your skin, your throat, your heart. And just as you're scanning, you can notice if there's any pain or tension or tightness or discomfort. And you can keep going. And there might even be places where there's numbness. There might be places where you don't feel something. And it's not a wrong thing if there's numbness. Usually that happens when we've been so disassociated from our bodies and we haven't had the space or the capacity to be able to feel those emotions. And our body starts to, hold on to these things, and it can get to a point where it's maybe too much or too painful, and we disassociate from it. And that's where, the feminine is the body. The feminine is inside of the body. It's the intuition, it's the wisdom, it's the creativity, it's the connection, it's the flow, it's the emotion, it's the expression, it's the freedom. And the masculine is the mind. we're so used to operating in our minds. And so even when we're doing this, it's like, oh, what does this sensation mean? Like, why do I feel this way? And we have a story about what the sensation means. And that leads us into doing certain things as well, where it's like, oh, I feel this way, so let me take action, or let me avoid this thing, or let me go towards this thing, because that's us trying to control the way that we're feeling inside of our bodies rather than actually being with the feelings inside of our bodies.
Oh my goodness, so good. Something you said in there that I want to pull out is something I think that's very impactful. And you were talking about when you're feeling your own emotions, not having the desire to immediately fix the emotion. So can you talk about, for people listening, and I had this conversation with a client recently, and she sent me back the mind blown emoji saying, wait, I'm not supposed to fix it right away. So can you share what's an alternative when you're feeling something that's incredibly powerful and there's that desire to fix? What can we do instead?
I think it's important to know that an emotion is just energy in motion. Most of us have heard this at some point in time, that emotions are energy and in motion. They're moving through our bodies, and they'll actually move within 90 seconds. But what happens is if our mind gets in the way of the energy and we make it mean something about us or about our circumstances or about our situation or about how we should feel, then what can happen is we start compounding those emotions. And it goes from feeling something maybe like fear or sadness or guilt into shame and anger and grief. And those emotions start to compound where it feels like it's too much. So the first things first, and this is a process that I love to do with my clients as well, is to notice, like, where in our body are we holding most of our tension? Where are we holding most of our pain or our tightness? Or like, where do you feel the most energy inside of your body? And once we go there, we connect with the first emotion, whether that's anger or whether that's sadness or whether that's fear, and not making it wrong. Because that's where most people get caught up, is they make the emotion wrong. And as children, of course, we're taught not to feel our emotions, or you're being loud, or you're being too much, or, be quiet. And we hear these things as children. So then we have so much shame stacked on top of our self-expression that we end up suppressing it rather than expressing it, and rather than letting ourselves feel it and be free. And when we become aware of, okay, yeah, there's an unprocessed emotion that's living inside of my body, then getting into a space where, number one, you remember that emotions are literally a part of being a human. And there's nothing wrong with them. You're here, you're designed to feel, you're designed to express, you're designed to feel the full spectrum of human emotions, and none of it is good or bad or right or wrong. And I think even in the manifestation field, sometimes we feel like we need to be high vibe all the time, or we need to be happy all the time, because if we feel this negative emotion, then I'm going to attract things to me.
So good. Go off, sis. Especially that. I kind of want to jam on that for a second, because I fell into that for a little while when I was becoming aware of energy and how, what you are, you attract, and all of those things. And I would find myself processing really heavy, deep emotions, and then having guilt, and not just guilt, but even, self-imposed judgment and shame of, okay, you're going to attract this if you continue to feel it. But I think that that's quite a misperception, because I think, just like what you said, emotions are a part of the human experience, and they are here for us as a gift. I think it's Abraham Esther Hicks that says that emotions are your internal guidance system. So they're there for you. They're always giving you messages. And sometimes it's there just to feel. We don't even have to understand or know why the feelings are there. But, just to reiterate, like you said, emotion is energy in motion. And if we don't allow it to move, if we don't feel it fully, then it doesn't go in motion, it actually gets stuck within the body. And that's when we have that tension, that tightness, and it even manifests as illness, disease, injuries. And, I had somebody that I love tell me recently that her cancer, she knew, was actually her grief. And she had to go through, she ended up going through rounds of leukemia, and she's cancer free now, but she's also been on her healing journey. And now she's really realized that that cancer was her grief. And so I thought that was really powerful for someone who's been through the entire diagnosis and going through the chemo and everything that that requires, that whole process, which is horrendous. And then to come out of it and realize it was my grief that was trapped within my body, manifesting as something that wanted to take me out, which is just wild. And there's countless stories like that where people come to realize that the emotional body will manifest in ways to get you to wake up. And I feel like sometimes people need a strong wake up call, because unfortunately people learn one of two ways, typically pain or pleasure. And, I look back at my life and I'm like, wow, I learned great through pain. Like, I just love to learn through pain, Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'm aware of this. Let's learn through pleasure.
Yes.
But it is just sometimes it's exactly what you need. Sometimes you need to get sick. You need the injury. You need something to wake you up, to get you to think differently, to expand upon your horizons, and to seek out something that maybe you weren't seeking before. And I find sometimes this can be the start of someone's spiritual awakening as well. So I'd love to get into a little bit about your spiritual awakening, if you care to share, and maybe some things that were coming up for you in that process.
I feel like I've had so many spiritual awakenings at this point.
Oh, you're like, which one?
Which one do you want to know about? The one last week or the one 10 years ago?
I feel that so deeply. Whichever one wants to come through right now is welcome.
One of the things that I started saying a few years ago is that it's a spiritual remembering.
Love that.
Like, I'm remembering that I am the creator of my reality. I'm remembering that my choices create my circumstances. I'm remembering that I'm not a victim to my past or my past experiences or even to my current circumstances. And at any given moment in time, I have the opportunity to choose. And I think sometimes we forget that. I know there's been many points in my journey that I've forgotten that, and I've fallen into somewhat of a victim role, whether it was through pain or conditioning or a really challenging traumatic experience that, I got into it. And we're on this topic of, pain manifesting in the body. And I think that that's one of my most profound experiences. And there's this book that I'll reference to, and I highly recommend getting it for a reference point. It's called Your Body Speaks Your Mind. And it talks about the psychological impact and the physiological impact of emotions in the body, and how when we're experiencing certain conditions in our body, there's always an emotion behind it. So for me, 4 years ago now, I had moved to San Diego. And right after I moved there, I found out that the man that I was dating another woman the entire time he was with me. And it was a very unexpected moment that was so traumatic. And because I was disconnected and I was in that bit of my wounded, hyper masculine energy, I wanted to be strong and I wanted to be able to keep going after my goals. I was really focused on survival. And I didn't allow myself to be seen in community and process the grief and the pain. So it ended up getting really stuck inside of my lungs and around my heart. And it ended up manifesting as getting really, really sick, to the point that I was on what I would say was my deathbed. And I had been so sick for about a month. And it got to the point where I couldn't breathe without feeling like there was shattered glass in my lungs. And I was in so much pain, but I was still pushing through. I was still pushing in the gym. I was still pushing in my business. I was still pushing towards my goals. And it was one of those moments where God smacked me on my ass and was like, you need to slow down. You need to stop, and you need to surrender, and you need to feel. And I ended up doing a mushroom ceremony, and I think that's what I really needed for me to wake myself up. It's like some of us realize what we need to do, and we can start making those micro choices to realign ourselves. Or sometimes we need pain and an intense experience to really remind us of what we are, which is the creator of our reality. And so after about a month of this experience, I was in the mushroom ceremony, and the man who I was with was holding space, and he hadn't spoken the whole entire time. And I remember in this experience, I was feeling all of this energy moving through my body. And it was so overwhelming, and everything around me was just dark. It was an evening ceremony as well. And I found myself wanting to run away from it. I found myself like wanting to do everything I could to distract from what I was feeling and not feel it and get rid of it and get away from it. But I needed to just sit with it. And I started to see this little light in my heart. Like once I actually got curious and felt it, there was this little light that was in my heart, and I noticed it like flickering in and out. And when it was flickering in and out, I got so scared because I'm like, this is my soul. And I feel like I'm dying. And I said that to him, and what his response was is, we need to die in order to be reborn.
Wow.
And that moment, it was like the little light went out, Phoenix came rising. And the next day I woke up and I felt so free again. And my symptoms have gone away. And it was such a profound moment because I was like, I couldn't have predicted this. I couldn't have like figured my way out of this. I fully gave myself to the feeling all the way. And I think that's why we're so scared of feeling, is because sometimes it's so intense that we feel like we're going to die. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes we need to die to the part of us that's holding on to the identity, to the ways of being, to the behaviors, to the beliefs that are keeping us stuck in a life that we're not meant for.
Oh, so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing about that experience. And It's funny because I feel like as you go on this journey, you get really good at recognizing when a death needs to occur and you no longer fear it. You're like, burn it, burn it. All of it, any of it that needs to go, burn it. I bless and release what no longer serves me. You start becoming this like emotional navigational ninja of your life where you no longer fear those dark moments. And, you know, I think about even my own experiences, especially when navigating some really strong emotions. And, you know, I remember just having this moment where I'm allowing myself to fully feel, and it was years of grief that I hadn't felt before. And so it was a lot. It was very overwhelming. And I remember saying, like, in one of the deepest moments, this is the hardest shit ever. Like, choosing to do this, it's the hardest shit ever. And then I just remember saying, thank you. Like, thank you to myself for choosing to feel it and choosing to go through it, because I had done it enough times that at that point I knew this is where my freedom lies, is in feeling the fullness of it, expressing it fully, and then walking in freedom. And, you know, I get full chills just thinking about it because it really is so powerful. And it's interesting because if we look at nature and we look at what happens in nature, the constant cycles and the rebirth and the death, the regeneration, right? We even look at flowers. I was at my friend's property an hour away from San Diego, and he was showing me these flowers. There was one that was in the most beautiful bloom ever. And when you smelt it, it smelled like the most beautiful perfume that you've ever smelled before. And on the other side of the bush was another bloom that had died and it was crumbled up. And he shared this really beautiful poem about death and rebirth and about the beauty of both and about how the death has to occur for the birth to happen. And so it's wild because I feel like we find all of these lessons in life that we need from nature because we are nature. Like, we are all one of the same. So yeah, really powerful stories there. Speaking of feeling the entire range of emotions, we have these concepts of self-love and self-acceptance. but this may seem like a very overwhelming concept for somebody that is feeling their emotions for the first time. They are feeling fully the experiences that they've had. And these experiences come with shame, insecurity, sometimes even extreme as self-hatred. So how can somebody choose to feel the fullness of these feelings and walk the path towards a greater and a deeper self-love? Like, what does that self-love actually look like, especially for somebody who can't see that yet? They can't see the version of them that loves themselves. Maybe they feel guilty for wrong things that they've done. Maybe they've done some things that they're really ashamed of, that they wish they could go back and erase. So how can someone feel the full range of emotions and walk that path towards self-love?
I believe it starts with compassion and gentleness. Yeah. My journey has been long. It's been 10 years of unraveling. And I believe while there's practices that we can do to shorten the time frame that it takes, compassion and gentleness is the most important. I used to really hate myself. Like, I used to look in the mirror and hate the way that I looked, hate myself for all the decisions I had made, hate myself to the point that I wanted to end my life and even attempted it. And for me, it started with believing in the possibility of things getting better. Just believing that there's a possibility that things can get better. And in that belief, it requires faith, because we're going to look to our past and all the decisions that we've made and the mistakes that we've made. And we might see ourselves as, this is who I am and this is who I've always been, so this is who I'll always be. But I truly believe that in any moment, we can make one choice that shifts us as a person. And that doesn't need to be a drastic choice. It can just be a moment of, I'm choosing to respond to the situation differently than I would have in the past. I'm choosing to respond with more love than with hatred. And with the shame, with the mistakes we've made, with the things that we've done that we feel guilt and wrong for, forgiveness is really the most important. I've had so many moments in my life where, I was very much out of alignment, not living in path with my true self. And I hurt myself. I hurt other people. I made mistakes. I wasn't living consciously or lovingly. And sometimes the weight of how much of that we've been through can feel so heavy that it's almost like, how can I ever find the light? How can I ever feel good again? How can I ever be a good person when these are all the things that have happened in my life? And even now, I'll still make mistakes. Even now, I will still fail. Even now, I won't always get it right. And now the time frame in which it takes me to accept myself, forgive myself, and get up and try again is a lot shorter than it used to be. I used to spend weeks and years in self-judgment and self-hatred and being so hard on myself. And that paralyzed me. I was so afraid to make a decision or do anything because I'm like, what if I do the wrong thing? What if someone gets hurt? What if something bad happens? And one of the quotes that was shared at the Untamed Experience was, fail hard, fail fast, fail forward, get up, keep going. And I think that mantra is so important because we can look around and see other people's lives and it might seem like they have it all perfect and figured out and they just know what they're doing. But the reality is none of us actually really know what we're doing. We just keep going anyways. And yeah, that's why forgiveness is so important. And I had a moment where I was sharing this with my partner where we had just moved into our place and I had some opportunities. I was like on a podcast and in a magazine and all these things where I'm like being seen. And afterwards, I started to have so much shame come up where I'm like, I said the wrong thing. Oh my God, this is out there in the world. I'm sharing this really vulnerable part of me. What are people going to think? And I was in a lot of self-judgment because it was like, oh, I made a mistake. And that had been consuming me. And then I realized that this isn't the last time that I'm ever going to be doing this. This is the first of many. So can I give myself permission to experience what it is that I'm experiencing and love myself unconditionally through all of it? And I think self-love and loving ourselves is really treating ourselves the way we would if we had a little child, like a little young version of you. Like, we're not going to be hard on that version of us. We're not going to shame them. We might unknowingly do it sometimes, but we're going to try to do our best to be gentle and compassionate and kind and caring and motivating and say, like, it's okay. You're going to make a mistake. You're going to fall off your bike. You're going to scrape your knees. You're going to get up and you're going to keep going again and again and again. And I believe that's the thing we all need, is this level of like resiliency and compassion and like true acceptance. Well, we get up and forgive ourselves for the times that we've fallen down, the mistakes that we've made. And it's so much more freeing. It's so much more freeing because then you're not having this perfectionistic way of thinking about life, and you're not putting this pressure on yourself to always do it right or always get it perfect. And when you feel the shame, it's like, oh, can I love myself even in this? Yeah. There's this book, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's called Existential Kink. Okay. And so good. It's a really good book about how sometimes we'll put ourselves through the same kind of stuff over and over and over again, because there's actually a part of us that enjoys the negative feelings or enjoys the uncomfortable emotions. And if that's calling you, I highly recommend reading it, because you really see that, oh yeah, I am creating my reality. And maybe there is a part of me that's really so familiar with these emotions. And just because you're familiar with these emotions, and because you're familiar with these emotions, you can also become more familiar with really good feeling emotions, like pleasure, like power, like love, like gratitude, like softness. It's just a reconditioning. And that does take work, and it does take intention, and it takes consistency. And it also takes us not being so hard on ourselves for the times that we don't get it perfectly.
So good. I definitely directly relate to the perfectionism. I've always been a high achiever, and I find birds of a flock, or what is that saying? Birds of a feather flock together. And so I know that my audience typically draws in a lot of people that are those high performers, high achievers. And, you know, one thing that's beautiful is that when I named this podcast Evolve with Emily, I knew that I wanted it to be that, exactly, evolve with Emily, because it was a forever and continuous evolving of self. And when I think about that example that you shared, even of, oh my gosh, did I put something out? Do I still align with that? Or do I feel like it wasn't the best? You know, I chose back then just to radically accept every stage of my journey. So if you look at my podcast, you will find many different versions of myself, some that I'm not even fully aligned with anymore. And I think that's a really beautiful thing, is to show people that you can grow, change, and evolve. You're always allowed to change your mind. And this idea of perfectionism is just that. It's an idea. It's actually not based in reality. Even the people that you think are getting it right all the time, they're actually not. They might just not be sharing that with you, which is okay. But I think it's good for us just to have a realistic perspective on life and to remember what we came here for. We came here to live the human experience, and part of the human experience is learning through every setback and failure and misstep. We can't learn if we don't go out and take action. And I think sometimes perfectionism causes you to stay stuck. You are frozen in place because you're so scared of making a mistake. And yet the people that are just willing to FA and FO, you can Google that if you don't know what that means, they're the ones that are learning. They're getting bruises and they're getting back up, and they're, you know, shaking off the dirt and the dust. And every single time that you do that, you're getting better. And to give you guys an example, I had a pretty large financial thing that happened. It's kind of like a mistake in business or something that shouldn't have gone through that went through. And it felt like such a big hit. And in a moment, the version of me now, back then, it wanted to panic. And in that moment, I was near a mirror. And so I was almost going to panic. It typically would have ruined my whole day. I would have gone into just, complete fear mode. And in that moment of feeling like that pit in my stomach of how am I going to recover from this, I look up in the mirror. I said, what would my higher self say about this? And I could almost see her reflection, so confidently, so calm, so embodied, just smirking a little bit, like she didn't embrace any lesson that was here to make her better. She isn't worried. She's not worried about a single thing. She's not even worried if it means that she's homeless. I feel like that's everyone's last, that's their deepest fear is what if I lose everything and I'm homeless? So it's she would actually embrace that. And there's nothing, not even being homeless, that will stop her from getting to where she's going. When I witness her energy, she's so calm and she's so clear and she's so embodied. And so in that moment, I shifted in a moment from that fear into that state of radical acceptance and of knowing that I'm on my divine path. And that divine path includes the things that I view as a failure, a mistake, a misstep. And so, I just think learning to embrace the fullness of wherever you're at is a really beautiful thing. And that self-acceptance can help foster that self-love as well.
Yes, that is so beautifully said. So beautifully said.
Thank you. I want to get into trusting your intuition and self-leadership. We, have a lot of people that want to be connected to their intuition. And sometimes they say, maybe I don't have it, or I can't feel it, or maybe they've heard it and they haven't listened to it. So what can we do to connect with our intuition? And then how does that go into self-leadership?
So something that you said earlier, which was quoted by Abraham Esther Hicks, which is your emotions are your guidance point. So our emotions and the energies that we're feeling are actually directing us towards our intuition. But the story that our mind has about something is usually where there's a bit of distortion. So as you're guided by the energy, maybe you feel joy or excitement or fear or curiosity or whatever it is, that is usually an indication of your intuition. And once we get to a point where we've processed the emotions and not get caught up in the story of them, our emotions can actually guide us to the highest version of us. So even your experience about, the financial, oh my God, this is what am I going to do? And you could get caught up in the shame of all of it. But that was actually the gateway to you embodying your higher self on a deeper level.
So good.
Right? Yes. So it's can every single emotion actually be a gift from the highest version of you to come more into alignment with your truth? Yes, 100%. Your anger, your fear, your guilt, your anxiety, all of it, it's just showing up for those emotions from a place of love more than anything. So what I mean by this is when I feel an emotion, maybe it's fear. And what would fear usually have me do?
Probably be super anxious, act out of alignment, maybe self-sabotage, maybe hide away. There's a lot of expressions.
Yeah. But if I saw the fear as a gift from God and a gift from my higher self, what would I do?
Probably sit still and introspect and ask what this is revealing to you.
Yeah. So those are the gateway to our intuition.
Wow.
Because we get curious about the feelings and the emotions arising in our body. And the more that we connect with that, the more that we can make decisions from that place. We're always leading ourselves at the end of the day. We're always making decisions. And leadership, in my experience, is going first. Leadership is I'm going to go first. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to take this leap. I'm going to go towards this thing. And sometimes that can be scary. And I believe that, we all have it inside of ourselves to create the life that we desire and the life of our dreams. And if you desire it, you are destined for it. If you feel the vision on your heart, it's because you're here to create it. Mm-hmm. And what if every single emotion, every single experience, like every single happening in your life is a refinement process for you to come more into alignment with the truest, most authentic version of you? Then what would you do? What decisions would you make if you truly knew that your success, that your dreams, that your desires, like everything that you want in your life was inevitable? What would you do?
Ooh, that is a powerful thought to entertain.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, listeners, go back and listen to her ask that question and then pause the episode and take a big, deep breath in and then take a big exhale out and really sit with that question. I think there's a lot to be uncovered and revealed to you in the listening of the answer to the question she just asked.
Yeah. Most of the time we'll do things that don't make sense, but they make sense. And leadership is going first in our own lives. It's saying, I'm the main character of my story. I'm the author of my own book. I'm the creator of my life and my destiny. And if I was to look back on my life and tell a story, what's the story I would want to tell? That's one of my favorite questions I love to ask myself, because we're always met with a crossroad of, am I going to choose faith or am I going to choose fear? Fear will have us stay in certainty, in comfort, in control, in what we've known. Faith will have us take that step forward into the unknown. And in the unknown, that's where we make ourselves available for anything and everything that we desire.
So good. Preach. I'm just so feeling deeply everything that you're sharing. Thank you so much for your embodiment and just the wisdom that you've shared so far. I want to kind of go a little bit deeper into co-creating the life, the body, the business that you desire from a place of love. So how can people step more fully into the intentional co-creator of their life versus the unconscious co-creator of their life?
I think the first thing is remembering that our choices create our circumstances. It's the number one thing. And you're not a victim to your past or your past experiences or anything that has happened. You get to choose right now from this moment moving forward what you are believing in. And our beliefs are really the things that create something as successful or as unsuccessful. Even when I was a personal trainer, I was like, I don't want to give everyone the same plan, like we can look at this from a business standpoint, or we can look at this from like a body-based standpoint where it's like, someone can tell you, here's how to do the thing. And you just follow the plan and do the step-by-step thing. And why does it work for some people, but it doesn't work for other people? Because some people believe in it and some people don't. That's it. And the thing that makes something unconscious is when we're not seeing it. So Carl Jung has that quote, which is, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to rule our lives and we will call it fate. And yeah, that's where we feel like a victim. That's where we feel like life is just happening to me. And, if it's meant to be, it'll be. And if it's meant to work out, it will. And we feel like that's actually the disempowered feminine as well, is she's going with the flow. And she has like this power dynamic with God or the universe where she's just like, I don't know what to do. And I'm not making these decisions for myself and I'm giving my power away. Whereas when you take your power back, you remember that you are creating with what you are choosing. And your choices can be conscious, like I am choosing to take this action. I am choosing to respond in this way. I am choosing to move in this way. I'm choosing to do this thing. Or it can be just not intentionally moving through life. It could be following what somebody else told you to do. It could be giving your power away. It could be just consuming and consuming and consuming without actually creating. It could be giving your own ability to make decisions away and then blaming life for it or blaming someone else for it. But when we take our power back and we start designing our lives with intentionality, Oh, I truly believe that's where we find freedom. And that takes radical responsibility. Radical responsibility for the choices that we're making and the choices that we've made. And that comes with self-forgiveness as well. It comes with a lot of self-forgiveness. And like I've mentioned, compassion, like having so much compassion for yourself. And the deeper that we learn to trust our own intuition and get out of our mind and into our body, the more that we're able to lead from our feminine, from our intuition, from that feeling inside of us that says, yes, move this way, or yes, do this thing, or yes, go towards this. Even if it doesn't like make sense or it's not what we've been told to do, it feels right inside of us. And when we follow that feeling of what feels right inside of us, then we start to see the way it manifests outside of us. Because at the end of the day, our external reality is a reflection of our internal reality, of the beliefs, the stories, the self-identities, the way that we've seen ourselves and what's possible for us. And I think that when we look around to anyone who's really created the life that they desire, it's not something that just happened to them. It's something that they kept choosing again and again and again and again, even when people question them, even when they question themselves, even when it didn't look like it was working, they did not give up on it and they just kept going no matter what.
Mic drop. Last question. Talk a little bit about busy as successful versus freedom as success. What is the difference between the two and where have you found yourself?
Most of the world celebrates success as busyness. How many people walk around and they're like, I'm so busy, I'm so busy, I'm so busy. And then other people are like, good for you. I love that for you. And I'm like, I don't want to be busy. I want to be free. I want to have time. That's what I wanted. And we were conditioned into a society where majority of our time was spent working or going to school or trying to make money. And we're exchanging our time, our valuable time for resources. But at the end of the day, we're losing out on our freedom. So to me, freedom is the ability to choose when, where, how long, how often, with who, without what I do. That to me is true success. And I'm not doing it out of obligation. I'm not doing it out of fear. I'm not doing it because somebody said that I should. I'm doing it because it actually feels right for me. So yesterday I spent the whole day, majority of the day, I sent out like one Instagram post, a couple messages to some people. And then I spent the day like reading and sunning on the balcony and like eating charcuterie and then having a bath and then like having dinner with my man. And at one point in time, I would have felt so guilty for that. And I would have felt like I'm not doing enough and I need to be doing more. And I would have had this anxiety that would have actually taken away from me relaxing into the experience. But I got to a point where I decided that what I desire for success is inevitable. I'm going to be successful in the way that I desire to be successful, which for me wasn't filling my time with calls all day long or being busy or having a full calendar of things. I lived that life. I lived the life where I'd wake up first thing and go till the end of the day. I worked like 16-hour days for what? To try and get to a goal. And it goes down to that thing that we were talking about at the beginning that, completely bypassing how I feel in the experience, completely ignoring what my body's begging me to do, which is slow down. And as women, we're not designed to operate that way. We're not designed to be on the go, push. We're actually designed for more spaciousness, more rest, more softness, more flow, this ability to go throughout our day and really trust the decisions that we make, whether that's a client call or selling an offer or creating or resting or laying in the sun or having a snack or whatever it is. And to me, that feels like true success. And it requires a lot of deconditioning of what we've perceived success as. So freedom to me is the ability to choose what we do with our time, how long we do it, saying yes to what we want to, saying no to what we don't want to do, and not feeling guilty for any of it.
So beautifully said. I relate to that so much. And I think in my experience, it's been unlearning that I have to move at a pace of 110 miles an hour in order to get to where I'm going, and really feeling into and believing what you said, that my success is inevitable. The success that I desire is inevitable. And I think when we know that, we don't try to outperform or overperform or strive or make it happen beyond what feels good to our body. So there's a lot of unlearning, a lot of deconditioning to do there. And I think it's so beautiful to have you share that from such a grounded, embodied place, because your essence gives permission to others to drop more deeply into their feminine essence. And we live in a world that is so hyper masculine. It's hard sometimes to realize that it is okay. It's not just okay, it's how we were designed to be in more of a flow state and to have more rest and nourishment. And I found too that when you're with a partner, it's so helpful to have a partner that understands that, a partner that actually reminds you to rest and encourages you to have a little bit of a slower pace versus the masculine that tries to push you just as hard as he goes, because I've experienced all of that as well. So just want to wrap it up here. Is there anything else that we didn't get into that maybe you want to leave the listeners with?
A reminder that the way that you desire to do things is the right way. There's no wrong way to live your life. There's no wrong way to create your life. The way that you are called to create your life is right for you. You can't get it wrong. You can't fuck up what's meant for you. Like, you are literally destined and designed for it. And if you feel called to it, it's because you're here to create it. So having the courage to go for it, and like you were saying, like, decondition, let go of those stories, drop the beliefs that are really holding us back, and go all in, because the world, like Taylor says, the world needs more different. We need people to be different. We're not meant to be all the same, doing all the same things. We're not meant to do it like someone else does it. We're meant to do it how the way we're meant to do it.
So beautiful. Thank you so much for everything that you shared on today's show, and for your essence, your embodiment, your wisdom. Just thank you. I really appreciate all the people that are doing the deep inner work on themselves and have walked the path and continue to walk the path, and also prioritize their own nervous system, their own emotional navigation, and their challenges that they go through. Like, the people that are just prioritizing their energetic imprint, because it truly is raising the collective energy as well. So Thank you so much for being on the show. Everybody, if you enjoyed today's show, then do us a favor. You can find her Instagram and all of her links down below. So share the show wherever you want to share it. Maybe text it to a friend on an Instagram story. And if you'd like to rate and review the show, that's the way that the show grows. So I'd really appreciate a rating and review if you enjoy that. Make sure to give Taylor a follow on social. You guys will love her content and feel so inspired and reconnected to your own feminine divinity within. Thank you guys so much for joining for another episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.